Now I'm gonna go ahead and let this guy out, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he's just gonna go straight for the bed and send it. What's up, agents? Zer here, welcome back to Lab. Today we're going to be discussing the brand new 1.8 update. That's right, Mojang went ahead and released another update to the game with a ton of brand new features. This was released on Tuesday, and as far as I'm aware, every single version of Minecraft that is on Bedrock Edition has in fact been updated as far as I'm aware. And there's, like I said, there's a ton of stuff. The majority of the stuff in this update, obviously, as you would probably expect, are bug fixes. I'm not going to go ahead and get into that because obviously that's boring and is an incredibly long list. But I will go ahead and say that if you want to go ahead and take a look at the entire changelog, make sure to check the link in the description and you'll be able to find out absolutely everything that is new and changed as far as this update is concerned. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're actually going to do is we're going to go ahead and go upstairs to the testing room, and we're going to be talking about ocelots and cats. Now, previously in the game, if you find an ocelot, if you're careful enough, you can tame it and it will turn into a cat. Well, that's actually no longer the case because ocelots and cats are now two entirely different mobs, and you can tell there's two entirely different spawn eggs for them. So what exactly is different about these two? Well, let's first discuss the ocelot. So the majority of the ocelot's behavior has not been changed whatsoever. What has been changed is the fact, first off, you are unable to tame these guys. You can still give them raw fishing, you can still give them hard particles, but you are not able to tame them. I could be completely wrong about this, so someone feel free to correct me in the comments if I am in fact wrong, but I do believe that if you get them to hard particles, then they will actually trust you a little bit more. Again, I'm not 100% sure about this. Now, what about cats? What's actually different about cats? Well, actually, these will actually spawn in villages as stray cats, and they will actually have one of 10 different types of skins that you can choose from, which obviously means that you'll get to know exactly what cat you're actually getting into. And something interesting is that one of those skins actually happens to have a flat nose, where the rest of them have the nose model sticking out. I just happened to get lucky spawning this guy in, which is actually kind of interesting. And I should also go ahead and mention that cats also have a chance to spawn in witches' huts. However, if this happens, then they will specifically have a black skin, which actually is kind of interesting. Now, they share pretty much the exact same taming behaviors as that of ocelots. You need to be standing still or moving incredibly slowly, otherwise they will run away from you. But you are still able to go ahead and tame them with raw fish. And I also have some dye right here, and as you can tell, I've got a few different items right here. We're going to go ahead and get into these items in just a few moments. So obviously, as I mentioned, raw fish, you can tame them. It takes a few tries, and you got yourselves a tame cat. Now, tame cats actually have a few features of which they actually share with that of tamed wolves, or dogs as people technically like to call them. So the first change that these cats have, that they have with dogs, is that you can get them to stand and sit on command. If they're standing, then they will do whatever they can to follow you around. If you get too far away from them, they will actively teleport directly to you. And if you have them sitting, well, they're just going to stay there regardless of where you are. Now, the other feature that they actually share with the dogs is that they actually have collars, and just like dogs, their collar by default is red. And obviously with dogs, you can go ahead and dye their collars. Cats are the exact same. So as you can tell, I just went ahead and dyed my cat's collar light blue. And something else interesting about cats is that they will take absolutely no fall damage whatsoever, which is actually kind of cool. The only other mob that actually shares this particular feature is chickens. However, in the case of cats, as far as I'm aware, they follow the normal rules of gravity, whereas chickens, obviously, they float down. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let this guy out, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he's just going to go straight for the bed and send it. Now, this is actually a new feature that cats actually have. Previously, they would have this feature with chests, and if this happened, you will not actually be able to access the chest until they get off, and they still actually have this feature. However, they will now do this with beds. Now, I'm not 100% sure about this, but you're actually not able to get into beds when this happens. I have tested this. It does technically let you in bed in creative mode. As far as survival mode is concerned, I am not 100% sure. And there's actually another feature regarding beds and cats. I'm just going to go ahead and say right now, this is probably not going to work out too well in my current perspective, but I'm going to do my absolute best. Anyway, so let's go ahead and stand you up and push you off the bed. And we're going to go ahead. You really don't want to get off the bed, do you? You like that bed. There we go, that works. So let's go ahead and get in bed. And cats, as you can tell, he got up on bed, and they will attempt to lay on their side and spread their legs out as they lay on top of you. Obviously, it didn't look all that great while I was actually in the bed. Obviously, I'm the only one here, so it's not exactly easy for me to showcase it, but they will go ahead and do that. And when they actually do that, and this is not a guarantee to happen, it's only a chance to happen, but what could end up happening is that when you wake up, they will actually leave you what is known as a morning gift. The idea behind the morning gift is that as you're sleeping through the night, your cat will go out into the world and kill a random mob and bring back what it ended up dropping. Now, I am not 100% sure exactly where this item actually gets dropped. It's either on the bed or on the floor nearby. I am not 100% sure. What I am 100% sure about is what you can actually end up getting from these morning gifts. So, as you saw, we have all these items inside this chest. These are actually all the morning gifts that you can actually end up getting. We got ourselves rabbit's foot, rabbit hide string, raw chicken, feather, and rotten flesh. These are all incredibly common drops when it comes to morning gifts. Now, phantom membranes, on the other hand, you can get as morning gifts, but they are incredibly rare to get, which actually makes a lot of sense, because obviously if you want to get phantom membranes on your own, you have to stay up several nights to get insomnia, which will cause them to end up spawning. And when you kill them, there's not even the guarantee that you're going to end up even getting the phantom membrane, and when you do, you're only going to get just one, and that's without looting. So that's pretty much all there is as far as cats are concerned. So let's go ahead and go back downstairs into the main lab, and we're going to discuss absolutely everything else, or at least the majority of everything else. So first off, we have ourselves tropical fish. Now, obviously, tropical fish have been in the game for quite some time. They were implemented with the aquatic update, and they will spawn in the coral reef biomes. What's actually changed about them is their size. Previously, they were incredibly tiny. If you were attempting to catch them, to transfer them somewhere else, like maybe you're trying to create an aquarium in your base, then they're going to be a little bit hard to get because they're incredibly tiny. Mojang went ahead and increased their size, I'm assuming to make that a little bit easier. So we got ourselves a regular tropical fish, and we got ourselves one of the larger tropical fish. So yeah, that's just a minor change, but honestly, I thought it was worth mentioning. Next up, we got ourselves pandas. Now, I'm actually going to be going ahead and making an entirely different video on pandas because there's actually a lot to go over when it comes to these guys, but I will at least give you a few little details about them. So, first off, they will spawn in jungle biomes. From what I understand, they are neutral mobs, and they actually have a number of different varieties that you can end up buying. This particular panda that I have is actually a weak panda, which actually just happened to happen on random when I spawned them, and there's no guarantee this is going to happen. And you can tell because he's got snot hanging out of his nose, and if you can look close enough, they actually have tears in their eyes. And like I said, I'm going to be going into further detail with pandas in a later video, so keep on waiting for that. But yeah, I wanted to go and show you guys what the panda actually was. Next up, we have ourselves a few different brand new dyes. We actually have ourselves white dye, blue dye, black dye, and brown dye. And as you can obviously tell, they are entirely separate from bone meal, lapis, ink sacs, and cocoa beans. Now, I actually think this is actually a pretty cool idea. I realize that there are people who kind of disagree with doing this. I understand that fully, but me personally, I think this is actually a pretty cool idea, because if you want to go ahead and use bone meal to go ahead and grow your crops, then it should technically only be used for crops, and then lapis should technically only be used for enchantment tables, so on and so forth. So the fact that they went ahead and added brand new dyes to go ahead and use with things like banners and making like stained glass or colored concrete makes a lot of sense. Obviously, like I already said, there are people out there who felt that was fine just the way it was. I fully understand it, like I said, but I feel like this is actually a welcome change in my opinion. Now, how do you actually get these brand new dyes? Well, first off, you can go ahead and put one of these directly into the crafting window, and you will output one specific dye from that. So I put in one bone meal, I get one white dye from it. Say, for example, I put in 5 ink sacs, I will go ahead and get 5 black dye out of it. It has not been implemented in the game just yet, but Mojang is working on implementing brand new flowers into the game with certain properties, and putting these particular flowers, once they're implemented, will actually produce these particular dyes, which is actually going to be really interesting once it actually gets put into the game. Next up, we have ourselves bamboo. Now, Mojang stated that when these were implemented into the game, they will generate naturally inside of jungles and very densely pop up in what's known as bamboo forest, which is a variant of the actual jungle biome. However, as of right now, bamboo forests in that sense are not actually implemented in the game right now. Mojang is currently working on an update to go ahead and implement that in, as I mentioned this. Now, as far as whether this is going to be a patch to 1.8 or if it's going to be held back to 1.9, it is not known as of right now. However, you are still able to get bamboo in survival, so it's not all completely lost. It's just not as easy to get as you would normally get if it was naturally spawning in jungle. So first off, you can get them in the chests of jungle temples, which everyone knows how hard jungle temples are to find, or you can actually get them from fishing. However, you have to specifically fish from a jungle biome, which I don't know how Mojang implemented that in, but they did. So if you want to get bamboo, fishing, in my personal opinion, is actually the easiest way to get, even if it means waiting quite a long time before it actually ends up happening. So that's how you get bamboo. It's also a crop, which I'm sure you probably already guessed, is the fastest growing crop in the entire game, and it's actually pretty cool how fast it grows, and it will grow anywhere between 12 and 15 blocks tall, which means if you have some sort of automatic farm, then you're going to be harvesting quite a bit all at once. Now, there are actually 2 different crafting recipes that use bamboo. I'm actually going to be getting into one recipe a little bit later in the video, so just hang tight. So the first recipe we're going to be taking a look at is this recipe right here. We've got ourselves 2 bamboo in a shape like this, and this will give you 1 stick, which is actually kind of interesting. We've got ourselves a brand new way to get sticks. And one last thing to mention about bamboo is that they can actually be used as a fuel source inside of furnaces. However, they will only smelt 0.25 items per bamboo. So even though you can use it as fuel, they're not exactly fuel efficient. So next up we have ourselves a brand new weapon, the crossbow, and this is the crafting recipe. Now before I go any further with the crossbow, I do want to mention that this is exclusive to experimental gameplay. Now, what's experimental gameplay? Well, I'm sure a lot of you probably already know what it is, but I'm going to explain it for those of you who don't. I'm going to be as brief as I possibly can. So when you're creating a brand new world, or you're trying to open up an old world and you're going through the settings, if you turn on experimental gameplay, then it'll add extra features that are technically they're technically still in development, but they decide to give people the chance to use it. They're not technically in the game. If you bring up a brand new world and turn it on, you will get access to them right away. If it's a pre-existing world, you turn it on, it will create a copy of the pre-existing world, and it'll rename it just slightly. It'll have the same name, but it'll have the EX in square brackets at the front. You have to do this when you're actually trying to load a world. You cannot do this while you were in a world. So if you do not have experimental gameplay on, you do not get access to the crossbow. I figured I might as well go ahead and mention that. So let's get back to the actual crossbow itself. So what exactly does it do? So let's go ahead and grab ourselves the crossbow, and let's get ourselves an arrow and a firework rocket. So I'm going to go ahead and put the arrow in my offhand, and let's go ahead and load this crossbow. It's actually got a pretty interesting animation. So it does that, which is actually kind of interesting. Now it actually loads much slower than that of a bow, but the nice thing is that with a bow, if you have it fully charged, obviously you have to hold the bow fully charged, and when you have it fully charged, you actually move slower. However, if you have a fully charged crossbow, then you can move at normal speed, and obviously you can go ahead and fire it. So let's go ahead and switch the arrow out for the firework rocket. As you probably expect, you can go ahead and load firework rockets into your crossbow, and they fire just as you would normally expect. If you actually have a firework star in the firework rocket, which obviously means it's going to explode, if that firework rocket hits a mob and explodes, that firework rocket will actually end up causing damage to the actual mob itself. It's actually kind of interesting. So let's go ahead and talk about enchantments for the crossbow. There are 3 brand new enchantments. They're made explicitly for the crossbow, and just like the crossbow, these are exclusive to experimental gameplay as well. So we've got ourselves Quick Charge, which has a max level of 3, Multi-Shot, which only has a level of 1, and Piercing has a max level of 4, and you can go ahead and put Mending and Unbreaking on your crossbow as well. Pretty much everyone would probably expect that. So what exactly do each of the enchantments do? So let's first go ahead and look at Quick Charge. So I've actually got a level 3 Quick Charge bow. So let's go ahead and charge the regular crossbow first. Yeah, as you guys saw before, it takes a little bit of time to go ahead and charge the crossbow. Now let's go ahead and charge our Quick Charge 3 crossbow. As you can tell, it took a lot less time to go ahead and charge it. Now, from what I read, I could be remembering this wrong, but I think for every level of Quick Charge that you have on your crossbow, then it'll decrease the amount of time it takes to charge by about 0.25 seconds, something like that. And Quick Charge 3, which like I said is the max level, actually charges faster than that of a regular bow, which is actually kind of interesting. So let's go ahead and talk about the next enchantment, which is Multi-Shot, which as you can tell, I've got Quick Charge 3 on this as well. So what exactly does Multi-Shot do? Well, when you use one single arrow, it'll actually end up firing 3 arrows. So if you're in survival mode, it will only consume 1 arrow in your inventory, but obviously it went ahead and shot 3 arrows, which is actually kind of interesting. I do like that quite a bit. Now let's look at the final enchant for crossbow. This is piercing and obviously level 4, and again quick charge 3. So first off, I want to mention that multi-shot and piercing are mutually exclusive from each other, which means that you cannot have them on your crossbow at the exact same time. The same applies with like the different forms of protection of armor or silk touch versus fortune on a pickaxe. Pretty much the exact same thing. So what exactly does piercing do? Well, on the surface when you fire, it doesn't look like it does much of anything, but what piercing does is allows your arrows to travel through multiple mobs and do damage to everyone that passes through. Now, how do you know how many mobs your crossbow will actually fire through? Well, it's actually pretty simple. You will actually go through the amount of mobs that equal to the level you have plus 1. So your normal crossbow will fire and stop at 1 mob, whereas piercing 1 will go through 2 mobs, piercing 2 will go through 3, so on and so forth, and piercing 4 will go through up to 5 mobs. It doesn't really change the damage, it just changes how many mobs it'll go through. Now what's interesting about all 3 of these enchantments is that you are actually able to get all 3 of these through an enchantment table. Obviously you can put enchanted books onto your crossbow with anvils, pretty much everyone is aware of that, but these are available through enchantment tables, which actually is pretty nice, all things considered. So let's move on to the next crafting recipe. We have ourselves packed ice, and this is the crafting recipe. You take 9 regular ice and makes packed ice. Now, for whatever reason, Mojang was holding back on this particular recipe, and no one really knows why. It's been in Java Edition for I don't even know how long, but yeah, like I said, Mojang for whatever reason was holding back on this particular recipe. Previously, if you wanted to get yourself packed ice, you have to go to either an ice spikes biome or an icebergs biome, and you have to go ahead and get yourself packed ice the old-fashioned way using a silk touch pickaxe. Obviously, because of this new recipe, that is no longer the case. I've actually built ice farms in the past. It's actually pretty interesting the way they work. So if you actually have yourself an ice farm, you can go ahead and get yourself a ton of regular ice, and you'll get yourself quite a bit of actually I shouldn't even say that. So you only get 1 packed ice per 9 regular ice. I kind of wish you would be able to get more than 1 piece of packed ice per recipe, but it is what it is. So let's move on to the final crafting recipe of this update. This is the scaffolding. As I said earlier, there are 2 recipes that involve bamboo, and this is the second recipe. So you use this particular crafting recipe and you'll end up getting 6 scaffolding. So let's go ahead and go to the obsidian chamber to test this out. And the reason why we're using the obsidian chamber as well, because the obsidian chamber is pretty large. So let's go ahead and get things set up. So here's what scaffolding does. So let's go ahead and place one down, and this is what scaffolding actually looks like. A lot of people have said that scaffolding looks like a table, and some people have gone as far as adding a little extra decoration to the scaffolding to make it look like a chair. It's actually a pretty cool block, all things considered. Now, if you look down at the block that the scaffolding is sitting on and you place another piece of scaffolding, it'll place a piece of scaffolding directly on top of it. So you can go ahead and do this multiple times, and it'll just keep placing scaffolding and making a tower, which is actually kind of cool. Now, if you actually have a piece of scaffolding on the side of the block, it actually has a slightly different model. It still has the 4 pegs in the top, but now it has some supports down in the bottom, which actually makes quite a bit of sense, all things considered. Now, scaffolding has absolutely no hitbox whatsoever. You can walk straight through it, and you're not going to affect anything whatsoever. And scaffolding actually is able to be waterlogged as well. So if you have a water bucket and you click on a piece of scaffolding, you can put water inside of a piece of scaffolding, which is actually kind of nice. So you can actually go up and down scaffolding like ladders. And this is actually the reason why I'm actually in survival mode, to prove to you guys that I'm not actually flying. So I can go ahead and hold down my jump button, and as you can tell, I start climbing up the scaffolding until I reach the top. And if I go ahead and crouch down, I'm actually going to end up crouching for a short amount of time, and then I'm going to start descending down the entire tower of scaffolding, which is actually kind of nice. So let's go ahead and head back to the top of our scaffolding, and we're going to go ahead and place a few blocks outwards from our tower. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is actually as far as you can go with scaffolding. So you can go 4 blocks out from your tower. After that, if you place another piece of scaffolding, it's just going to fall all the way down to the ground. It doesn't even matter what direction you're actually facing. Now, it actually knows if you're actually that far out. If you place another piece of scaffolding out, it will still end up falling. So it actually technically knows. So that's actually pretty good to be aware of. Now, if you were to go ahead and crouch on a piece of scaffolding that is not a tower, so right here, as you saw earlier, if I were to crouch down and hold crouch on this area, I would end up going down. However, here, if I go ahead and do the exact same thing, I actually do not end up descending, which is actually pretty nice, all things considered. So let's go ahead and go all the way back down to the bottom. And scaffolding actually has another pretty cool feature, and that's how you actually dismantle your scaffolding. And this is actually pretty satisfying to watch in certain cases. So if I go ahead and break this bottom scaffolding, all the rest of the scaffolding is going to break and fall straight down. As you can tell, we got ourselves all the way back up to a full stack of 64. And scaffolding actually shares this particular property with that of chorus plants, which you would actually end up getting in the end. Of course, you can actually farm those in the overworld, obviously. So yeah, that's scaffolding for you. So let's go ahead and put that away, and let's go ahead and disable all of this stuff. Now, there is actually one more set of stuff that I want to go ahead and cover, and these aren't really like blocks or mobs or anything. These are like in-game stuff that you can go ahead and change. First off, we have ourselves functions. Now, functions, from what I understand, are basically like sets of commands that you import into the game via an external file, I do believe, and it allows you to do a number of different things. Now, this was originally released in Java Edition. However, as of right now, I do not know how much of the Java Edition functions are actually in Bedrock Edition functions. But I do remember one particular video that I watched on Java Edition functions, a tutorial, is that apparently there was one function that was made that allowed you to enter a command, and the way you type in the command, I don't really remember, but let you create a perfect circle out of blocks, which is actually kind of interesting. Uses some sort of fill and set block type of command line. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, but that's functions. We also have ourselves a brand new game rule in the game. This is random tick speed. Now, what random tick speed does is it allows you to change how fast things happen in the game. Most notably, how fast crops are actually able to grow. By default, random tick speed is set to 3, and if you have a large random tick speed, like say for example you have an incredibly slow growing crop, if you actually have random tick speed set to a pretty large number, then that crop will end up growing incredibly quickly. And say, for example, you also have like a single grass block in an entire field of dirt. You have random tick speed turned on. It'll spread incredibly quickly. There are a lot of other uses for random tick speed, obviously. And last but not least, we have some brand new add-on features. And before I go into what these features are, these are also exclusive to experimental gameplay. I wanted to go ahead and mention that. So, what exactly are these brand new features? Well, according to Mojang, you are actually able to create custom behaviors, particles, and mobs, and you are not required to actually replace anything that is currently in the game. Like previously, if you had a brand new weapon that you wanted into the game, but you actually need a mob to use it, well, you no longer need to do that. You can basically you're creating brand new mobs in the game. You are no longer required to replace pre-existing mobs. It's actually kind of interesting. So like I said, yeah, that's pretty cool, but also only available to experimental gameplay. So if you actually make it on where you're using this brand new feature, then you're going to need to let people know that they're going to need experimental gameplay. Obviously, there's going to be a web page that Mojang has that's going to give you more details as far as this brand new scripting for add-ons is concerned. But yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. So no longer are you required to, like, say for example, replace creepers in order to make a completely brand new mob. You can have creepers still in the game, but you can have a brand new mob regardless. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but yeah, all mobs are currently in the game, you can leave alone and just add completely brand new ones. So that's actually really cool. It's basically representative of that of like regular mods for that of Java Edition, which from what I understand, they're trying to kind of make less and less possible. I could be wrong about that, but mobs, Java Edition, popular. Anyway, I'm getting off track. But other than that, that's actually all the features that I'm going to be discussing for this video. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and end things off. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. One more, make sure that subscribe button for future content. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at AgentCPU0 to stay updated. This has been Zer0's. Thank you guys for watching, and with that, I'll see you guys later.